All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. We're here with another episode, and today we're going to go deep on elite levels of human optimization and fitness. We have our guest, Rulk.
Laying work. Oh man, he's laying there going deep. All right, brother. I gotta get ready. Good thing I had my coffee. 4 shots, bro. Ready? Let's go.
There you go, man. Well, listen, I had my single cup this morning, and I was just reading. I was reading on you all week because when I have a guest on, I like to do as much homework as I possibly can. And dude, your prowess in fitness is incredible. You must have said, Rulk, I'm just going to make a playoff Hulk, and I'm just going to be as big as the Incredible Hulk because you're massive.
No, dude. No. It's the name is funny because the name came from some of my Brazilian friends. So because of my some of my strength, etc., they used to call me Hulk, but in Portuguese, the H is pronounced with the R, right? That with the R sound. So that's where it looks like Rulk with everything. So everyone started calling me Rulk. Outside of Brazil, everyone who speaks Portuguese, everyone calls me Rulk. And then because of my ties with Hawaii, in Hawaii, like when you're like, hey, here comes the guy. You say, hey, it's the Rulk. Here's the guy. So that's where the Rulk came from. But yeah, it's been a long time coming, but yeah, it's just pretty much like I just accepted it and rolled with it. So
Yeah, I mean, I also saw that some of your clientele, dude. You trained Thor.
yeah, Chris is a good dude, man. Chris is a good guy. He's he's not very attractive, but it's okay. I just I try to tie my eyes and close them when I work with him. But yeah, he's a great dude. I got a chance to work with him on the center app that did really well. I'm really proud of him. But he's just a dude, so good. Those guys, all those guys, Brolin, Hemsworth, they're great dudes. But it's like hanging out with a bunch of young kids. You know what I mean? It's just running around. It's all like elementary school comedy.
Yeah, that's the best comedy.
Best comedy, bro.
Dick and fart jokes.
That's right.
I love it. So how did you first get amped up into fitness, and when did you want to understand the potential of the human body?
You know, it's interesting. I started off my educational background is in kinesiology. I have an emphasis on biomechanics, but my focus always was understanding the adrenal system and how we organize the nervous system. So when I was in school, there were a lot of people interested in the 300-pound guy that could lift 5,000 pounds. I was more fascinated with the 9-year-old woman that lifted the car off her grandkids. I was like, how did that happen? Like, how do you do that? I mean, to me, that's where we were like, there must be something else deeper than it. So understanding it, when I focused on my sequencing curriculum, which I created, which is RFT, Raw Functional Training, it's an acronym. It was all how sequencing a movement directly correlates to the management of your adrenal system and organizing your nervous system, etc. And I started working, although I worked with a lot of elite athletes, and I was blessed to work with in pretty much all genres, from NFL, NBA, NHL, MLB, UFC, etc. I was always fascinated with the first responder community. You know, my dad was a law enforcement officer for a number of years, 26 years. He did a lot of amazing things in his career. Then he went to DA's office and did a bunch of other stuff. But I grew up around. That's what I grew up around is first responders, fire, police, etc. So I used to see the police officers and firefighters, and they're in great shape, and they would be complaining that they couldn't perform, even though they physically looked amazing. They couldn't perform on the job, and so that was something that fascinated me to begin with. You know, like whether you do any elite athlete or anyone that was put into situations, so physically you are at your optimum, but you can't perform under pressure. So a lot of people would then focus in on the psychology of it, right? Sports psych, and like I said, I'm if from a psychological standpoint, I think it's great. But there's also something happening neurologically. There's also something happening from that standpoint. So um, for me, I was always fascinated in that genre, in that capacity, understanding optimization, understanding resilience, and those guys in the first responder community are elite athletes. They just don't win or lose games. Their focus is life and death, right? So I was like, well, that's something I definitely want to get into. And then I started working with law enforcement to start. So I worked with a lot of the academies, a lot of the SWAT teams, ACT divisions, etc. Then I was blessed to work with a lot of the fire departments and city, county, wildland, all the municipalities, different departments across the country. And then I worked with a lot of the elite military. So I've worked with SEALs and Rangers and Marine Raiders and guys in Top Gun, etc. So I've been very blessed to work in that aspect. But in the heart of it, I'm a nerd and a scientist. So I mean, I'm always a biomechanist. I'm always looking at how is it. I'm trying to break it down, optimization, figuring it out, and I'm finding that everyone's now at this point where they're trying to understand, how do I optimize my physical and mental collaboratively, right? How
Hmm.
do I do it so that both operate at a high level? So I'm always a student of the game, always learning. But yeah, man, it's been a fun journey. It continues, right? The journey continues, just like yourself, Freddie. It's just like it's never ending. It's never ending. That
No.
quest for knowledge is always there.
It's what keeps me going, and it's what pulls me out of bed in the morning
Mhm.
with a level of excitement that I couldn't sell that. I couldn't bottle it. I'm really honestly stoked to get up and do the work I do.
Great.
And because I get to put it on myself, right?
Mhm.
I talk about this a lot on the podcast, just like having like a retroperitoneal lymph node dissection and all these abdominal surgeries. So for me, fitness has been it's been phases of recovery, functionality, regaining bowel function. And now I'm into the place where I'm starting to be able to really get into functional mechanics. So, when I grew up, it was like I remember first finding the gym and I was like, we were doing bench presses with all my buddies. And we're like, after like 7 weeks, we were like, we have packs. I was like, I remember being like, and everybody would just stand after their bench press. They were like, I just want it to stay like this,
Yeah,
because it was cool. You're like, look what my body can do. And
yeah,
now it's like, that understanding of the gym was like, okay, there's a squat, there's a deadlift, there's a press, there's a pull. And
yeah,
that was sort of it. And if I think about that movement,
right.
it's very limited on what planes those exercises exist on. And you see a lot of guys that are big and built these days, but there's limited functionality. So how do you address that in the gym? How do you work on those multi-plane movements? Like what's your belief system on that?
Well, it's interesting, man. I think you always have to have a multi-dimensional approach, right? You don't want to be one-dimensional, even from the standpoint of movement and the planes of movement. And interesting how we got introduced is the guys over at BRRRN, right? The BRRRN Boards, and the BRRRN Boards are such an amazing piece of equipment. Those two guys, Jimmy John, are just great guys to begin with. But the idea and the concept of working on that plane of movement is so huge. We just focus so much on the sagittal plane, like moving forward and that sort of thing. So we don't really work a lot of lateral movement. We don't work a lot of multi-directional movements, right? And so for us, and that's really the core aspect of functional training. You hear functional training so much. When I first came up, no one, when we were saying functional training, people were like, what is that? Doesn't even make sense, and now it's kind of like a buzzword that everyone utilizes. But really, to be truly functional, not only from mental and physical capacities, that you have to be multidimensional. You have to work on your weaknesses. You have to
Mm-hmm.
understand that we live in a 4D world where we're always moving in different directions. So if you're just focusing on one, you're actually starting to create more of a disparity in different strengths and weaknesses. And because of that, then you have aspects of your training where you're vulnerable, to injury, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable to various aspects there. And then also from a performance standpoint, you're not going to be as strong. You're not going to generate as much inertia. Um, and, people focus so much on mobility, which is great. I think mobility, I'm a huge proponent of mobility, but dynamic mobility and be able to push energy and intensity through mobility is something where that's the next step, right? It's great to be able to stretch laterally. It's great to be able to touch your toes and stuff, but can you do that with a bit of dynamic intensity? Because that's real life, right? And so
Yeah.
products like the BRRRN board are huge. I think they're game changers. I think people haven't seen it, but people are very hungry to know more about it. because there's a myriad of benefits to it outside of just, making your muscles stronger. It's, there's regulation aspects to it. Sensory processing is such a major aspect of my training and my core foundation, that understanding how that regulation helps us, it balances us mentally and physically. So
Yeah.
I think everything's tied together. I think people have focused so long on kind of, one aspect of compartmentalizing fitness or compartmentalizing movement, and understanding that it's all interwoven, um,
Hmm.
and that you have to work on all aspects of it, is hopefully opening the door for people to kind of get more of a comprehensive outlook on not only their overall performance, but from an everyday person's perspective, overall wellness, right? Because we want to be
Yeah.
the versions of ourselves. And in order to do that, we have to work on our weaknesses and do things.
Yeah, that's right. I would love an example of an exercise because what I'm hearing you say is it's great to stretch. Like I'm imagining like a lateral lunge, but how do you apply like dynamic strength at the end range of that motion? Like can you give me an example of an exercise where you're going to put that on a body?
Are you talking about on a burn board, or just, are you talking?
Anything. Well, we could use burn board if the audience at home, a burn board is it's a big composite material. It's like it's a resin with two boards at the end. You're going to put on booties and you're going to just like a figure skater, you're going to do these lateral lunge slides, which is so fun by the way.
Not Freddie, I never do. Uh, my buddy Apollo Ono, who is, he's just a weapon, Olympic legend. But he's associated with the guys from Burn. But he's like, dude, get you in the Olympics. I'm like, bro, no way. I'm trying to get on that thing. I literally look like a 5-year old that was just on skates for the first time. In fear of falling or tearing. But yeah, I mean, generating power is always a key issue. I mean, I think for me though, I've always been. A lot of people see my RFT movements and they go, oh, is it like an animal flow? Not specific. I mean, there's aspects to it um, that look like animal flow, but it's really not. There's a vast difference because for me, it's purpose driven movement, right? It's
Hmm.
why we do it. But a lot of the movements that we generate are for regulation to help, not only build specifically like for aesthetic training or hypertrophy training, we tend to isolate a muscle. We go, hey, we're going to work hamstrings or quads or biceps or triceps. But a lot of my movements are understanding movement, actually moving in a plane of motion, sagittally, laterally, frontal plane, whatever you're doing. We want to make you more powerful in that. And everything has to work together. So,
Hmm.
functional perspective, I think understanding what that is, if people are like, hey, can you explain the difference between just overall strength training and functional strength training? And I think, it's hard because a lot of times strength training is isolating one specific movement to get very strong at doing one specific movement over and over and over again. Um, but for me, it's now the second chapter of that would then be, okay, let's try to incorporate different movements, different muscles, different intensity flows, right? Different positionings, etc., where we have to activate different muscles and they learn to work together, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, that's like the second chapter. Then, of course, me from the neuro side of the third is like, now you get into the processing. When, like, okay, let me take you to the next level, like deciding, being able to process information, right? Organize information, and then execute motor planning while you're doing motion. It's always like, it's kind of like the juggling aspect, right? You could throw one ball in the air. Okay, there's two balls in the air. Can you throw three balls in the air? Four. And the better you are, you just being able to have better hand-eye coordination, better processing speed, better reactive speed, better, accuracy. Those are aspects that I'm fascinated with because I think
Hmm.
you're always so in our fitness industry, we're so focused on bigger, faster, stronger for so long, right? Get bigger, get faster, get stronger. There's definite benefits to it. Don't get me wrong. I think it's huge and a huge aspect, and I'm a proponent of all that. But if you don't focus on the processing, if you don't focus on the computer, the steering wheel, on what's happening, the size of the car doesn't matter anymore, right?
Yeah.
And find more of that from athletics or whatever is good. Like guys are like, dude, I can lift 600 pounds, I could deadlift 600 pounds, but then I went out camping, I was moving stuff, and I pulled my back. I can't, because they're just not accustomed. The body is not accustomed to moving that way. You get guys, I pulled my back lifting, dropping my keys when I was picking up my groceries. It's just they're not accustomed to doing that or having to focus on other things. Or so it's just like I said, it's always for me identifying ways to strengthen the neuro side of things and how it talks to the body and how we all collectively work together to create this synergistic power power sequence, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Give me an example when we're talking, let's just say it's a 45-year-old male, relatively good shape. Do you have like a couple exercises that are your absolute favorite to incorporate in a training regime?
I love, of course, we talk about all the time, the crawl is such a huge movement. It's a body weight movement. It's a foundation movement. We've all crawled as babies. We learned, to stand, like we crawl to crawl, to sit up to stand to walk to run, kind of a thing, right? So
Mm-hmm.
understanding crawling and all the aspects and the benefits of it, not only physically from shoulder stability, hip stability, core strength, but from the nervous system standpoint and affecting your adrenals and everything that's going on with that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
crawling is always something I try to incorporate. People are like, "How do I do that?" I mean, you could just do a 5 meter crawl up and back in between a power set, right? That you're doing with a barbell or dumbbell or kettlebell, and you start to see, wow, my system is trying to figure it out because your body's always trying to figure out movement patterns, as you know, Freddie. It's always trying to figure out. Okay, we are inherently love habit habitual. Like we like routine. No matter people are like, oh, I don't like routine. You do. You like some kind of your routine is no routine kind of a thing, right? There's some kind of a habit if you dissect everybody. So understanding that if you're doing something, if you're doing a lot of weight training, incorporate some body weight movements in intermittently between sets, compound them through supersets, etc., and you'll start to see a huge advantage because then you're working not only your anaerobic system, but you're also working your aerobic system, and there's just a ton of stuff that we can do there. So
Yeah. Yeah, I'm also so interested in this like longevity game,
mhm.
and I wonder from your experience, there's got to be an energetic cost to DNA repair, methylation, how the body ages. With what is that right amount of exercise to, like you said, keep you in a state that you are that 90-year-old grandma who can lift a car? Like how I'm always said, I was like, I just want to go grocery shopping on
Yeah,
my own
yeah,
in my 90s. I think that would be a great flex.
yeah. No, I totally agree with you, brother. I think it's very interesting because whenever you're getting into situations and you're starting off on a program, right? And guys that are like, how do you do that? And I think it's not so much about intensity. We focus so much on intensity, right? It's been pushed into it. And I love the CrossFit community. I think it's great. I think CrossFit
Mm-hmm.
is great in a lot of ways, but smashing people, will get stronger from it. Yes, you will, but your cortisol goes through the roof. And you're just consistently in inflammation. You're kind of in a consistent inflammatory state, right? Your body
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to balance that and allow your body to repair itself as well, because you're just beating yourself up to a pulp. So I think understanding that there has to be balance, and people don't necessarily like that. They just like to go full throttle, but balance is important. So understanding and kind of looking at sleep patterns and looking at recovery. I think that's where anytime there's an ebb and flow, and I think whenever there is such a huge push over the course of the last 15, 20 years on intensity and
Mm.
finding crush yourself, that you see now how much people are hungry to learn more about recovery. How do I reduce my pain? How do I reduce my inflammation? I have an autoimmune issue. I've like forced it. My body is like, it's just going, it's fighting itself because I've just beat the hell out of it. Right.
Yeah.
Understanding that it's great to have high level of intensity, but it's better to have consistent balance. So
Mm-hmm.
consistency of balance is important. In order to have that consistency, that's the hardest thing. I've worked with so many elite athletes. I've worked with so many elite, first responders and military and fire and police, etc. And I've talked to them. I've had candid dialogues with them. And doing things at a high level of intensity is not that challenging to them. They can do it. But the hardest thing that they're always going to say is being able to be consistent. Can you day
Mm.
in, day out do it? And to be honest, that's where we see the best benefits. People do things and they run out. They're like, I'm not getting what I want fast enough. I'm going to pivot and switch gears. And they never realize that they're 5 yards away from seeing some success.
Yeah.
But like, it's too hard. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to pivot. And what I try to preach, tell them, like, guys, that's what we talk about resilience. We talk about, perseverance. And these are character traits that you want to inherently adapt into every workout that you do. So consistency is key. Um, so for the person that's always feeling like, I'm just getting beat up, consistently, you can train hard. You want to train hard. You don't want to, you want to go full throttle, but you also got to go full throttle on your recovery. You got to go full throttle on your mobility. Your set protocol has got to be on point, right? Your nutrition's got to be dialed in. And people,
Hmm.
oh my God, it's too much, right? Usually, it's too much. I don't want to think about all that stuff. I just want to work out hard. Because, to be honest, out of all those things, the easiest thing to do is just work out. I mean, people are like, it's hard. It is hard, but it's a lot easier than eating clean. It's a
Mm.
lot easier than getting an adequate amount of sleep, putting down your phone. It's a lot, there's a lot of things that people are like, well, that is kind of hard. You're going to find more people that are like, can you work out hard one time? Yeah, they can do it. But you're like, can you sleep consistently over the course of the next 2 weeks? Can you do this? Can you eat like this? Can you take these set protocols? Can you stretch, do mobility work? Can you do breath work, meditations? Oh, no, I don't have
Yeah.
time. Right. So I think that's where people have to reinvest in themselves and understand, hey, I'm worth it and I got to do it. If you want to be that 9-year-old woman, it's the consistency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
Yeah, I would join with you on that. I think it's I unfortunately, just because of the people that are drawn to this podcast, or people that are also been through some really, really hairy medical
Right.
stuff.
Right.
um that's the other avatar that I'll say is inspired into making all these changes, because they're sick enough. And
Yeah.
there'll be a lot of times that people say, they're like, I'm not ready to do what you do. And I'm like, you're not sick enough yet. You will be. Unfortunately, you're on 3 medications to shut down your immune system right now. I don't think this gets better in your 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I invite people, you don't have to wait until something horrible happens. Like, you can layer on one thing today. And I'm always amazed at how quality of life changes.
Yeah. I agree.
I didn't want to get in the ice bath this morning. It's cold here in Texas. When
Right.
you wake up in the morning and it's colder outside in the air than the ice temperature, you're like, we dip into the 30s, and I'm like, oh, the 40-degree water, the 38-degree air temperature, ambient. I'm like, and I know myself. I was like, my body's just not going to warm up. But I didn't want to do it, didn't feel good about it. And I was like, you got to do it, bro. Like, there's no camera, nobody's there cheering me on. I'm not making a social post of it. Those are the tough times for me, which I'm always like, I wonder if other people struggle like this, talking themselves into doing this, thing that we know is good, but it
Right.
sucks. And
Dude,
that's the battle.
it's so interesting, brother. More recently, people look at like a guy like Dave Goggins. Dave's amazing. Dave's a great dude. And they're like, dude, look at Dave. He's just doing hard things, really, really hard things all the time. There's a
Yeah.
benefit. You're learning to it. And then he had a recent conversation with Andrew, with Drew, like Andrew Huberman, and they were talking about different aspects. And I love that they started to touch on the neuro side of things, because people want to go, okay, he's doing hard things. How is that even going to help me? Right? How is that helping me? I want to understand it. And when you start to dissect it, and we start talking about the, anterior mid-cingulate cortex aspects of the brain and what's going on in the brain, it's an aspect, an interesting part of the brain that for example, in people that are obese, it's smaller, but when they go on a diet, it grows, right?
Mm,
In athletes, it's larger. For people
mm,
that are going through a challenge and they overcome that challenge, it grows as well. But just as quickly as it grows, if you seek comfort, it shrinks again. So it's fascinating to me that as we age, I always say aging is like the aggressive pursuit of comfort.
yeah.
We want to be comfortable. And unfortunately, not understanding when we talking about neurologically that anterior mid-cingulate complex, like cortex, excuse me, it's interesting because that aspect of the brain is important for the will to live, to want to be stronger, to live, and that is always been a fascinating thing to me, right? Understanding aspects of the brain and what's actually going on, because people want to know why. More people than anything are like, why? What am I going to do that? Why? Why should I eat like that? Why should I do that? But when there's some efficacy behind the fact that this is what's actually happening neurologically, and it's been proven in peer-reviewed studies, and it's understanding, and people see it, it's okay. Let's start to train this. And that's the hard part, is that people think the quality of life is about comfort, and it's not. The quality of life is consistently changing. Life is hard. It will throw things at you, as you know, unexpectedly, that you're not prepared for. And if you have not trained that way, and if you not have, put yourself through a little bit of adversity every single day, you get soft, and then you're vulnerable. And you're vulnerable to not only um, mental resilience, but you're also, vulnerable to disease, you're vulnerable to injury, you're vulnerable to all these things. And I think, for me, as a man, as a father, you get into a situation where you want to make sure that you're laying the tracks and the groundwork for your kids. You want to make sure that you're like, hey, this is how you do it. And you want to create great humans that are going to, be able to contribute to society. But if anything, one thing that I can't promise my kid, well, I can't, my kids like ask me all the time, what's going to happen? How's this going to happen? What's going to happen? And I'm like, I cannot promise anything to my kids outside of they're going to face adversity. That's the one promise I know 100% you guys will face adversity. And if I don't prepare them and let them understand, how do I face that? How do I face adversity? Whether that be personal adversity, family adversity, health, mental health, whatever the case, injury, disease, whatever the case is, then I feel like I'm not prepared, doing my job and preparing them for what it is. And if there is one thing that a lot of people that are listening to your podcast have gone through tremendous adversity, whether that be physical, mental, whatever, loss, whatever the case is. But when you overcome it, you're like, oh, I got stronger, I got through it. It's because your body learned that it's okay. Like, I can do it. I can get through it. Um, and then we seek comfort. And I think, me included, we all seek comfort. We want to be, when we're cold, we want to be warm. When we're hot, we want to be cold. When we're sleepy, we want to sleep. We want to do what we want. And understanding that it's not always the case. You have to make sure that you maintain control and you dictate the navigation of your life. And in order to do that, I think it's important that you put yourself through these micro periods of adversity. And that's where the cold water immersion helps. Like, that's like taking time to invest in yourself. Lots of times I tell people, it's like buying life is a lot like health, and fitness is a lot like putting tires on your car. Most people just put the new tires on, they're stoked, they'll drive the hell out of it, and they're like, oh, we can go a little longer. Look at it, it's fine. Like, the tires are good. There's still a little bit of tread on there. And you go and you go and you go. And the only time anyone changes their tires is if it looks like it's going to explode, or you get a nail in it and you're like, oh, okay, let's just switch them all out. No one ever tracks, like, how long have I been doing it? How I've been driving it? They don't ever look at that aspect of it. And it's so much that analogy, it's so much about how life is. Like, we do our health and we're like, oh, we're fine. I sleep okay. I eat all right. I walk around. I should be fine. And then when they face adversity, they're just like, oh man, they're not able to overcome it like they want to. And it's just fascinating. I mean, to me, that's something that we need to address.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it brings me into I just want to touch a little bit on recovery and your thoughts on that.
Sure.
When you talk about the intermittent periods of like this intense hormetic stressors,
Hmm.
the I'm always reminded of the seasons that a fruit or a vegetable would grow in. That there would be times when the field is totally barren. There's times when it's fruiting, and we do need to give ourselves that rest period, whether it's daily. But I do think there's something to this season. Like, I look outside and the leaves are bare and it's cold, and there is an impetus, there is a calling or a whisper from another nature to be like, yo, you can hibernate. You can have a little extra belly fat right now. We're
Yeah.
not gearing up for a photo shoot. And so I'd love to hear your ideas on like recovery, specifically, like, what do you do? What do you lean into to recover?
I know it's interesting, man. Seasonally, I think we forget about the seasons, right? We try to do, and it's hard to stay consistent. I'm not saying you have to do the same thing from January 1 to December 31st, but you have to stay consistent on doing something. And so
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about, we eat differently in the summer than we do in the winter. In the winter, you can focus on other things. It's always about people focus on what they don't have or what's going wrong versus, having some gratitude on what's going right and what they do have control. So if it's cold, then you focus on other aspects. If you can't go outside and run, then let's focus on some strength work. If you can focus on mobility, you can focus on recovery. We can always be doing something. But I think the hard part that I always struggle with, with most people that I talk to and clients and people that I've advised or worked with, is we seek preferred intention. So we want to do things that are preferred always, right? It's cold. Damn it. I hate it. It's cold. I want it hot. Like I want to be, I don't want to eat this. Okay, well, but it's a slippery slope when you're talking about like what's cold. All right, I'm just gonna eat whatever I want because screw it, it's winter, and then I'll just eat better in the spring. You need to focus. There's certain things that have to stay consistent across the board. You can have some variance in it, but you have to have an underlying commitment to yourself that you're gonna maintain that as you kind of move across the process. So um, yeah, I mean, I think during the winter we all love to enjoy the different foods, etc. But I think we have to be consistent. It's harder because the days are shorter. No one likes when it gets dark early, and all these different things. But during that period is really where you can set yourself apart. That's where really the growth is because you're doing things when it's challenging. So we talk about those micro stressors and the stress inoculation. It doesn't have to be acute and intense and one period. It could just be an overall overarching theme that during the course when I'm doing things that are very hard during the winter that I usually would not do because I'd usually just say, no, I'm not going to train. I'm just going to eat whatever I want. I'll catch up in February, March when it starts to warm up. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's where we're cutting ourselves short. We forget about how much time we have on this earth, and making the most of it. And I think not until people are put in a situation where they understand their mortality or they understand their quality of life can be forever diminished or affected that they make these life changes. And then people think they're crazy. And the only reason people rationalize, oh, they're doing that now is because, oh, they almost died or they had a disease. That's good for him. He's doing that. He stays consistent. And it doesn't really make people change. It's just until you personally are affected by it or someone you
Mm-hmm.
have to make that. And it's unfortunate, but that's how a lot of us are because we're just like, it doesn't affect me. I want to be comfortable. I want to relax. I want to be happy. But happiness is described at this point by comfort versus strength and resilience and having the confidence to be able to go through life, understand that you can face any obstacle and you can do those things. People, that should be happiness, the ability to have that. But right now, happiness is I just want to eat food that makes me feel good, fills my belly,
Mm.
want to just lie around and watch TV and hang out,
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
it's the culture that is always a challenge. But that's why I'm drawn to those that have gone through a lot. Like a lot of those people that are on, that are listening to this podcast are I'm huge fans of. They may not even I might not know them, but just what they've gone through and the fact that you've gone through adversity, I have a huge amount of respect for them. I have a huge amount of reverence for their ability to say, you know what, I'm going to take control of my life and I'm going to do it. And they're listening to your podcast because they want knowledge, they want inspiration, they want affirmation that they're on the right path. Um, it's huge. I mean, those are if you're like, what are your kind of people? Those are my kind of people, right?
Yeah. That's great. It's great. And given that, I love that you because what you're doing with people, and whether it's a movie star or it's you're creating a new program for center, you are putting that information into a practice and you're showing the results, which is like that embodied knowledge, which people are really drawn to. They respect it, they see it, and so and so we'll link your Instagram in this podcast, but you should go, just because it's an inspiring Instagram. You're always posting something, some different type of movement or somebody you're working with, and you see that and you're like, I see whenever I feel like I've been really lazy and I see an account like that, I was like, I got to get off my ass. It's time to go. What am
Come
I
on,
doing?
weapon,
You know,
bro.
there's a little more juice to squeeze, because I love that. I love, I love the Rocky Balboa story. I love those stories. We're Americans. We love it.
It's the Freddie Kimmel story. It is not the Rocky Balboa story, bro. It's all you, dog. You have the eye of the tiger, brother. You have the
Eye
eye.
of the tiger. Yeah, I just released. Depending on when this comes out, I just interviewed this Marine, Casey West, who he was given 3 months to live with terminal brain cancer, glioblastoma, and he's about to hit his 2 year, because he
Right.
was like, nope, here's it's going to be my story. I mean, incredible story, but I want to know, because you have access to a lot of cool stuff in your house. You mentioned before we hit record that you have a gym, you have a recovery center, you have a cardio room. What are some of the things that you do to recover at home?
For me, I do a lot. I've incorporated a lot more time for my mobility work, which doesn't require any equipment.
Mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of that. I usually start my day. There's a lot of different therapies that I use. I love cold water immersion. I do the hardest thing first, which is the cold water immersion. There's two components of that. I have the recovery aspects that we do. So the daily kind of, protocol and maintenance. And then later on in the day, I'll do my resilience protocols, which is a little bit longer. And it's a little bit of a different focus point on doing it. But in the mornings, I'll do my cold water immersion, contrast therapy with my infrared sauna, my mobility protocols. So I'll go through all my mobility work. And then I tend to work on, from a strength perspective, I work on the smaller things that I don't, that you may neglect during an actual workout later on in the afternoon. So training my neck, with iron neck and that kind of stuff, do a lot of core rotational work. And then also utilizing things like we talked about the PEMF therapy, the Halo. I
Mm-hmm.
use all their frequency sets. I'll use the hyperbaric chamber that I have, and my red light therapy, etc. So I do a lot of things. It's that's why I have to get up so early. I'm an 0400 guy, so because I'm like, what do you get? Everyone's like, what do you? Because I have so many hacks, I got to get up early enough to kind of get
That's
up.
great.
But yeah, for me, it's just maintenance. It's kind of like my church. It's hard. There's days that you just rather stay in bed and relax, and
Yeah.
you got to get up and do your thing. But been using a lot of the grounding mats lately, which has been
Mm-hmm.
amazing. Just because I don't always get the time because of my schedule to get out and really get my grounding and my earthing in. Um, but yeah, I notice a massive difference when I'm not able to do that. Say sometimes I'm traveling, etc.
Yeah.
Things, it's when you're away, you're like, it's great, you're traveling, you're getting stuff done, but you're like, man, you feel the difference. Not only I feel the difference not only physically but mentally. I don't feel like the spear is as sharp as I'd want it to be.
Same.
And it's fascinating when you're just like, man, you crave it because you've seen it now, you've touched on that level, you know how you can perform. So when you don't perform that way, you're like, what's going on? You're like seeking ways to kind of find that. So, but it is what it is. When I travel, I try to do things that are outside of the box, that are kind of like, hey, let me have access to things maybe I don't have access. So I think looking at things of what you do have versus what you don't have, what you can do with what you can't do, um, is something that I think I've always been fascinated with. I used to, I worked with an athlete. His name's Kyle Maynard, and he was born with no arms, no legs. And I don't know if he has an amazing story. He's done climbs, he did jujitsu, he's done all these things. But I talked to Kyle, and he's such an inspiring guy. And
Mm.
when I talk to Kyle, he's always like, he never feels sorry for himself. He never focuses on, oh, I can't. He just figures out a way. And it's just, I think that's where he has this inherent happiness and joy in him, because he just appreciates what he has and makes the most of it, and finds satisfaction in overcoming the things that most people would sit back and have feel bad about, and
Oh man, it's
you know
all perspective.
all
It's all perspective.
it's
I say
all
that all the time. Sometimes I'm like, I'll look at myself and I'll like touch my body and I'm like, fuck, I can get up, I can walk around, I can run. I'm living somebody else's dream that they would sell their soul for.
it's yeah
That's That's it. And like and I do that a lot. There's a lot of times I check in. I'm like, oh my god, anything I want to eat's in a cold box over here. I got a little supercomputer in my pocket. I access any information anywhere, all the time, any video. I'm like, if we went back to 1492, people would be like, you what? You're not a king, bro.
Yeah,
You're a god.
yeah,
Like the way we live today is godlike, and there's no. You have to do gratitude for that because where do
yeah.
we climb to from here?
I think
Nowhere.
I think that's where the challenge is finding that when we talked about, and that's why I was drawn to you, brother, and drawn to a lot of the things that you talk about on your podcast and how you live your life is optimization of our own potential is really the journey we all go in because we are born alone, die alone. It's just the way it is. We're on
Mm-hmm.
um, and why don't we want to optimize every moment we have? We take it for granted. If we said we only had 7 more days to live, if you had 7 days, look in the future, someone came back and listen, 7 days, this is going to happen to you. You got 7 days, dude. Um, would we spend it? I know there's a lot of people that spend the time that they'd spend a day sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's crazy to me. It's hard for me to understand because I think there's a lot of people that would spend a day of that 7 just depressed and sad.
Mm-hmm.
Not understanding that the depression, that emotion is not, it's really just, it's non existent. It doesn't really do anything. You have to just embrace what you have, make the most of it, and experience and really soak in every moment. And I think if we're able to live our life like that, what an amazing, like, could you imagine, no matter what age you are, to live the rest of your life understanding, just like soaking in every moment? Like, we talk about it's cliche, like it's your last, but if someone was to come back and tell you that, like, dude, this is going
Mm-hmm.
to happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
we,
I think about that context all the time when people are talking about new treatments that are gaining people like a couple months, and you'll have some people be like, "Oh, well, this new treatment which irradiates the surrounding tumor and gives you 2 more months," or like,
yeah,
"It's not that significant." And I'm like, "Whoa!" I
great.
was like, if you
Yeah,
told me, "Hey, you can go back and you can get like a week with
yeah,
your grandmother, like you get an extra week," and
yeah,
you knew that was extra, tell
yeah.
me there's no price.
No, it's crazy, man. It's
Time.
it's all context, right?
Yeah.
It's whether you're talking about your kids or if you want to have that emotional connection to your kids, if you're talking about your parents, your family, whatever, and you were there on the deathbed with them, and you're like, "This is it." You're saying goodbyes, but someone goes, "I can give you another month. You want another month with them? I'll give you one more month." You would freak out. Like, could you
You'd
imagine?
freak out.
Oh, you're like, a month? Yeah, I'll give you one more month, but you had to done this. Did you do this? You're like, I did do that. Okay, here you go. Another. Dude, you know how crazy that would be? But people, the context, don't just look at it like that. They're just like, a month. A month's another month, bro. Every moment is precious, and it sounds crazy until, and people will make you. There's a lot of, especially the younger guys and kids will look at it and go, dude, months goes by so fast, bro. As you get older, you appreciate it that you
Mm.
time and you want, and that's where I think you and I we talk about all the time. You want to make sure that you are in optimum physical and mental shape so you can really enjoy what you have around you, right? You want to push
Mhm.
yourself a little bit so that you can appreciate the moments. The moments don't necessarily have to be an hour. It could be a second, could be 5 seconds. But you work your ass off for those 5 seconds. I mean, you look at these athletes like Usain Bolt, Mike Phelps, and all the guys, and they train their ass off for 10 seconds of work.
Mhm.
And so that whole mentality, that greatness that you get, is sometimes the greatest moments of our lives are not a day, it's 10 seconds, it's five.
Mhm.
So you want to train and train, understanding that you're going to train your ass off so that you get those magical 5, 10 seconds throughout your day that you're going to get because you're in the shape that you are. Whether you feel better, you're more present, you don't have pain, you embrace family, friends, and moments. But in order to do that, you really have to buy into that idea that I'm training for those small moments, and that's what life's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I got just a couple more questions as my battery runs to, hold on, this is always amazing to me. 6%. I love
Oh,
it.
I love how, do you see that? That's Freddie's way of saying, I'm tired of talking to Rulk. We're going to get out of here. I'm going to say that there's 6 seconds,
Six.
six,
I wish I could screenshot you. Actually, you know what? I will. I'll text it to you.
hard time. Good movie.
But it's good. But no, I'm glad I can text it to you. I'm like, Control Command 4. I got you, bro. Um, if you were able to wave a magic wand and tune all the television screens of the world into channel Rulk,
Channel.
what? Yeah,
Wow.
channel Rulk, the Rulk network. Is that what we want to call it? Rulk News.
The
Yeah,
Rulk.
Rulk News. Oh, Rulkcast. What would you say to people right now in the state of the that the world is currently existing in? One could say it's hard right now, but what would you say to the people?
I would just tell people that right now, it's all about resilience, and your ability to overcome adversity. So for me, adversity, a lot of people are going through a lot of adversity right now.
Mm-hmm.
Financial, could be professional, adversity, work wise. It could be a myriad of different things, but it's an opportunity. Adversity is an opportunity. It's the opportunity to overcome, and really, that's where the growth happens. It's really where the growth happens. So if you don't have, it's all comfort and all warm and fuzzies, you're not growing at all, and it's really not what life's about. So I
Yeah.
think people are given the opportunity. It's a blessing right now. The challenges that everyone's facing, personally, professionally, whatever. It's an opportunity to get stronger, and it's an opportunity. You're growing. It's a growth model. So I try to tell everybody that when you're going through it, because I've talked to some, in my career, I've talked to so many different elite athletes and experts in their fields and elite military, elite stuff, and that I've gone through a tremendous amount of things. But I've also had the opportunity to talk to, housewives, stay-at-home moms, and people that are just starting out, and college kids, and people going through overcoming. Everyone has a story, and everyone. I think you're not alone. We always think that we're alone through adversity, but really
Mm-hmm.
not. Everyone has it uh, in their own way. So I think we can collectively come together a little bit on understanding, hey, we're all the same in that capacity, um, and do the same way we say we embrace the pain collectively, like we're all the same, we can overcome adversity. Saying that person did it, that person did it, you can too. You just have to commit to the purpose. You have to commit to purpose to do it. And I think once you get across that first line, it's a lot easier. When you're running, that first mile is the hardest mile. After that mile, you're like, okay, I got in the zone. You catch your stride, you're able to get it,
Mm-hmm.
keep running. Um, and I think that's the key, is that just keep running, man. Keep running, because we're all there running with you. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We're all there running with you. Just, you may not see us. We might be on the other side of the fence, but we're running too. So stay with it, brother. Stay with it, sister. Like, we're there. So I think that's what I would say. In Hawaii, there's a saying called "always can," which is, if can, can. If no can, still can. You just got to get it done. But I think understanding that collectively we're all family in that, and we talk about like promoting kindness and promoting compassion. Um, I think those are important, because you never know the struggles that people are going through.
Mm.
You understand the small moments that affect people.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing, a wave, encouragement, and even you going through and maintaining the discipline and consistency. There are people watching you that if they see you quit, there's always someone watching. So
Mm.
you figure out, like, why should I even do it? It's because people are counting on you.
Mm-hmm.
People are counting on you, and they look at you like Freddie. They look at you and go, listen, well, Freddie's doing it. Like, in that one moment, you could have turned the table for someone that made huge strides in their own journey, or someone who was just wanted to turn it in and give up. But they said, dude, I just go, and that guy he keeps going. So I'm going to take one more day, one day at a time, man, one day at a time. Just make it to tomorrow, just one more day. And it's like one foot in front of the other. So
Mm-hmm.
I encourage people to understand, and is, if you could take anything from it, is just one more day, just tomorrow. You want to give up, just give up tomorrow, not today.
Yeah.
Right.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And then because we're on the Beautifully Broken podcast, What does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
I think imperfection is such a beautiful thing. Perfection is never, it's not attainable, nor is it desired. You know, I think the beauty is in the imperfections. The beauty is in overcoming things and getting good at things you're not good at. Uh, Beauty is coming to peace with yourself and being proud of yourself. Beauty is finding imperfections in others and supporting them through it. It's just it's really imperfection is really the desired outcome,
Mm,
right? You
yeah.
want to you want to die. We are born. They always say we're born perfect, but you want to die imperfect. You don't. You want to go through it and experience it and fall, get up, go down the wrong road, turn around, come around, make it, because that gives texture to your life. And I
Yeah.
think those of us that are on that journey, and those of the people that are watching, are part of the podcast, that watch your podcast, that have gone through adversity, understand that when they've gone through and overcome cancer, when they've overcome different things, if they look back, they never want to say, I wish I never went through that. They never say that, which is fascinating, right? They always go, I'm glad I went through that because now I'm this.
Hmm.
Now I'm here, right?
Yeah. More
And I,
times than not, that's what I hear.
yeah, and you see that. And I think a lot of people that do that, don't get me wrong, like if you never had to go through it, then you never went through it. But there's a reason for it. And rather than us look at it and being seeking to a way in which to seek that comfort is understanding that adversity is going to come and we overcome it. And if you're in the gym, you're working out, and you look around and you're not what you think you should be, just be happy with what you are and stay consistent down the journey. I think we look around so much at others and say, like, I wish is that what I'm supposed to be? Is that where follow, stay in your lane, stay in your
Yeah.
lane, and appreciate where you're at. And I think if anything, that's what I would want to push out to people so they understand it, because that's where a lot of the happiness, internal happiness, is going to come. Most of the time, people aren't happy with themselves, and there's usually a reason, because they compare themselves to those around them, or they have unrealistic expectations of what they need to do. But just embrace the moment, embrace where you're at, and understand you have full control and freedom of will to do what you need to do. And
Mhm.
I think when we give them a little bit of a roadmap and help them navigate through that adversity, that's where the magic is, right? Let's take you to the magic castle. In order to get that, you need to make sure that it's going to be the windy road, not the straight
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Um, and finally,
road.
I just want to say heartfelt thank you for being a guest on the podcast.
Dude,
I'm excited for people to hear just your energy and your vibe. And where can people go to learn more about your work and what you're working on in the world?
now for me, it's I'm a bit of a tech dinosaur. I'm trying to change that. People laugh. Freddie, for me, like, IG is pretty much my jam.
Great.
But yeah, if you contact me if people want to learn more about my training protocols, etc. People want to understand kind of my methodology and approach. Definitely, directly contact me, and I'm happy to try to reach back out. My goal at this point in my career is try to help as many people as I can.
Great.
So, with my knowledge set and what I know, I'm happy to kind of disseminate that to as many people as we possibly can.
Awesome. We made it to 2%. Thank you for being a guest on the Beautifully Broken podcast. All right. Big love.
Love you, brother.